Most people hear the phrase low intelligence and immediately think of something fixed, something you're either born with or not. But psychology tells a very different story. What we often label as low intelligence is usually just a set of habits, patterns of thinking and behavior that can be changed. In fact, many of these everyday mistakes aren't signs that you lack intelligence. They're signs that your mind simply hasn't been trained in certain ways yet. And once you become aware of them, they can actually turn into your biggest strengths. So if you recognize yourself in any of these, don't judge yourself. Pay attention, because awareness is where real intelligence begins. Let's explore a few everyday mistakes that quietly hold people back and what they really reveal. The first mistake is reacting instantly without thinking. Psychology shows that impulsive reactions often come from emotional overload rather than lack of ability. When something triggers you, anger, frustration, defensiveness, your brain switches into a fast, automatic mode. There's a well-known concept in psychology called the amygdala hijack, where your emotional brain takes control before your rational mind has time to process the situation. That's why in arguments, people say things they later regret. It's not that you didn't know better, it's that you didn't pause. For example, someone makes a slightly critical comment and you respond instantly. Later, you realize you overreacted. The hidden strength here is simple. The moment you learn to create even a small gap between stimulus and response, your decision-making improves dramatically. Intelligence isn't just about knowing, it's about choosing when to act. Now, let me say something real for a second. If you're still watching this, it already tells me something about you. Most people would have clicked off by now. They don't like looking at themselves this honestly. But you stayed, which means you're curious about yourself. And that alone puts you ahead of a lot of people. And if you're someone who likes understanding how your mind works on a deeper level, then this channel is built exactly for you. So take a second, subscribe to This Explains You, not just for videos, but for that version of you that actually wants to grow. Now let's go deeper. The second mistake is avoiding difficult thinking. Research indicates that the brain naturally prefers easy answers. It tries to conserve energy by jumping to conclusions or relying on assumptions. A study from Stanford showed that people often choose simpler explanations even when better, more accurate ones are available, just because they require less mental effort. You might notice this when you skip over something complex or assume you already understand a situation without really questioning it. It feels efficient, but it limits you. Because intelligent people aren't the ones who always have answers. They're the ones willing to sit with questions. So if you've been avoiding deep thinking, it doesn't mean you can't think deeply. It just means you haven't trained that ability yet. And once you do, your perspective expands faster than you expect. The third mistake is taking everything personally. Psychology shows that when we constantly interpret situations as being about us, we narrow our understanding of reality. Someone's bad mood becomes, they don't like me. A delayed reply becomes, I'm not important. But research on cognitive biases shows that this is often just a mental shortcut, your brain trying to make sense of uncertainty quickly. In reality, most things have nothing to do with you. When you step back and ask, what else could this mean? Your thinking becomes more flexible and accurate. You start seeing the bigger picture instead of a filtered version centered only on yourself. And that shift is a sign of growing emotional intelligence. The fourth mistake is resisting feedback. Let's be honest, nobody enjoys being told they're wrong. Research from Harvard suggests that people often reject feedback not because it's wrong, but because it threatens their self-image. So instead of processing it, we defend, justify, or ignore it. For example, someone points out a mistake in your work, and your first instinct is to explain why it happened or why it's not a big deal. But here's the shift. Feedback is data, and people who learn to process it without ego improve faster than everyone else.
If you've ever resisted feedback, it doesn't mean you're not capable. It means your mind is trying to protect you. Once you move past that, growth becomes much easier and much faster. The fifth mistake is seeking validation. Psychology shows that when your sense of worth depends on others' approval, your thinking becomes biased. You start making decisions based on how they will be perceived, not what is actually right. There's a concept called social approval bias, where people adjust their behavior just to fit in or be accepted. It feels safe, but it slowly disconnects you from your own thinking. Real intelligence grows when you can think independently, when you can stand by your ideas, even quietly, without needing constant reassurance. So if you've been seeking validation, it doesn't make you weak, it means you're human. And learning to trust your own judgment is one of the most powerful upgrades you can make. The sixth mistake is repeating the same patterns without reflection. This is the one that keeps people stuck the longest. Research indicates that without reflection, the brain defaults to familiar habits even when they don't work. Same reactions, same mistakes, same outcomes. Not because you can't do better, but because you never paused to question it. Let me ask you something honestly. How often do you actually sit back and think, why did that happen? Not blame, not excuses, just awareness. Because that's where intelligence shows up. Not in knowing everything, but in adjusting over time. Now pause for a moment. Which one of these felt a little uncomfortable? Which one made you think, yeah, I do that? That's not weakness, that's awareness. And awareness is where everything starts to shift. Because the truth is, intelligence isn't something you're given, it's something you build. In your reactions, in your thinking, in the way you question yourself and the world around you. So if this made you see yourself a little more clearly, even for a moment, then you're already moving in the right direction. And if you've made it this far, don't just scroll away. This is exactly the kind of thinking most people avoid, and exactly the kind that changes you. So subscribe to This Explains You and stay with this journey, because the habits you think you're holding you back might actually be the beginning of your growth.